Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone is appropriate. I grant you that. Intro. Thanks for being here. I am looking at the chat. Everyone looks excited to get things started. We have like an exciting show for you today, everyone. All right. So I want to not even waste any time at all and actually just get our TikTok Thursday segment out the way. So, Peggy, producer, let's go ahead and enroll that.
Me, I really like corn.
What do you like about corn?
It's corn! A good corn good knobs. It has the juice. I can't imagine a more beautiful thing. It's corn! I can tell you all about it. I mean, look at this thing. When I try this, it's out of anything in.
I love that. I love that so much. Folks, I got to tell you that song is going to keep ringing in my ear throughout the day. And I don't mind because it's kind of catchy. So, right now, for our guest that's coming up, we have a little segment intro that we want to roll to get things started. So, go ahead and let's show that now.
In the world of software engineering, programmers are constantly learning. It's part of the job. And part of that means consuming tutorials. And if the process of learning is boring, it kind of makes part of your job boring. So when I came across a video several videos actually by Sonny Sangha, also known as PAPAREACT, I was pretty impressed with his style for teaching because there's music, vibrant chat, while showing how to build clones of popular apps like Airbnb, Amazon, Netflix. I mean, lighter versions of them. That's why we're calling them clones, but nonetheless, it's kind of cool to be able to recreate that. It's kind of like a party while coding. So with that, I definitely wanted to invite him to our channel so we can chat with the one and only PAPAREACT.
I gotta tell you, folks, I don't know about you, but like as a software engineer, taking tutorials and learning as much as possible was extremely important to me. So it would be a drag when stuff was boring. So I am happy to have our guest today give us a talk about his background and a little demonstration of the magic that he does because I really appreciate it. That's why I invited him over. So let's all bring together. Let us now bring up Sonny Sangha. All right.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thank you, Reynald, for bringing me on. That was an amazing intro. And a massive thank you to Microsoft for inviting me in.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And the crowd applauds for you to be here. So why don't you go ahead and give us a little short, I know you give us a background, which is going to be in our bio, but give us a little info about your background.
Yeah, sure. So I've been coding for about 10 years now. Did the whole, corporate work, startup work. And then I found I wanted to take that experience and actually help other people get into the coding space. I found I didn't like the tutorials that were being taught. So you had the part 1, the part 2, the part 3 tutorials. We thought we'd shake it up a little bit. And that's why we came out with making educational clones about apps that people love. And it took off. And we figured out a nice little formula to help people go from zero experience all the way up to getting their jobs. And it's been a crazy, humble achievement to be able to do and help so many developers out there. And so now we have a YouTube channel. It's somewhere tagged down below. But yeah, feel free to go check it out afterwards at Sonny Sangha.
Nice. By the way, some people in the chat are already starting to ask questions for you. One of them was like by Harry408. Sonny, please tell me what is the VS Code font name that I guess you're using?
So I actually never changed the VS Code font. I believe it's the default font unless I've changed it. But I've not changed anything with my VS Code font. But I can check it and I can let everyone know in a post.
All right, cool. Papa Farm in the house by Jay. I think we got some of your fans here joining
We
our
do.
chat.
So
Cool.
Jay
Nice.
actually is my right-hand man. He works with me. He's part of the team. The Papa Fam is the community that we built. It's the largest community of awesome developers that we like to bring to YouTube. And that's our community. That's our group.
Great. All right. So, folks, I want to tell you that in this show, we're actually going to be giving out a couple of prizes, and they're actually like at a really great value. So, what I want to do is to ask you guys to pay careful attention, take some good notes while Sonny's doing his demo, because that's going to be your advantage in order to be able to ask to be able to answer the questions. We're gonna ask two questions, one for like the main prize and another for like a follow-up. So anything you want to mention about that, Sonny, before we kick it off?
All I'll say is that everyone has to have a sharp eye today. They're going to be two somewhat hard to spot questions, but I know from past videos that people can figure this out. So I look forward to announcing those winners at the end in the quiz.
Great. All right. So what do you have to show us, Sonny?
Yeah. So today we're basically going to be breaking down how I basically power up my VS Code setup. So how I essentially go ahead and code every day. So all the shortcuts I use, all the extensions I use, and then we're going to go ahead and actually put them to use in a build where we're going to transform a to-do list app, which looks pretty boring. Okay. It's pretty dull in the start, to something like this, which is a fully responsive database connected to-do app. So we're going to be doing all of that in a very short amount of time. So I'm showing you how the tricks and stuff that I'm going to show you are going to allow you to go ahead and create a full to-do list app in blazing fast record speed time, and it will be powered by the real-time cloud Firestore database. So a lot of fun stuff to come up.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Let's jump in.
Let's jump in. Awesome. So first thing I want to run through is basically the VS Code shortcuts that I run through day to day. And I use these religiously. I use them all the time. So get your pens and papers out, start taking notes on this. But this is basically the different shortcuts I love to use. So here we have a demo project, and this is going to be the project that we are going to go ahead and get kickstart. So this is what you see on the left-hand side of the screen over here. Right now, what I want you to understand is VS Code has tons of different shortcuts. You do not need to know every single one, but they're going to help you supercharge your workflow. So let's imagine I need to switch page or switch file. Rather than clicking in here, going over here, I know it doesn't seem like that long, but those additional seconds add up. So my first shortcut is Command P. Command P pulls up your file view, right? So I can type in index and I go over to index. If I do Command PP, I even go back a file. Right, so it's kind of a handy little trick I use every single day. And in some cases, you might want to jump to a certain line. So in this case, if I do index, let's say 50, I'm hopping straight over to the end of the file in this case, because it only goes to 43. So that's my first little trick, Command P. Now, if you add a little shift to that, so you do Command Shift P, now you're actually going to go ahead and get a, I guess it's kind of a way to run your VS Code apps and carry out instructions. So in this case, if I want to format the document, I can simply go ahead and type in format, and any of the extensions I actually add, I will be able to go ahead and basically interact with them through Command Shift P, right? So this is going to come in handy in a ton of different methods. It's worth knowing about and it's worth doing. Now, there's a few that are just going to be quick notable ones. Command S to save your file. So if I go ahead and save, you'll know that the file is unsaved over here by the little circle dot. So by hitting Command S, we save the file. That's something which I know it may seem like everyone will know, but they do. No, they don't. So yeah, we're doing pretty well so far. And then the next one I want to mention is actually multiple cursors. So this is actually one of my most favorite things that VS Code does. And a lot of people don't know that you can actually do this. So let's imagine I want to highlight and click on several places at once so I can edit the text in more than one place. What I can do is I can actually go ahead and click over here, hold Option, and click over here. Now you can see I've got two cursors, and I can actually go ahead and edit the text in two places. Super handy little trick you can do. And there's also a shortcut for this, but you just got to be careful in this case, for example, where we've got button, button, button. So if I press Command D, you can see it actually goes ahead and highlights over the same bits of text multiple times. So quite a handy little thing that you can do in VS Code, and it comes in clutch quite a lot of the time, right? Now, another thing I wanted to show, these are kind of for navigating your code. So again, there's going to be so much here that I just want everyone to watch it, enjoy it, and then afterwards they can kind of, memorize this stuff if they need to. Command Shift left and right to highlight my code is something I do every day. If I do Option up and down, I can actually move my line of code. Believe it or not, I use this way more than you think. So let's imagine I need to take this snippet for whatever reason outside of my code block. I can go ahead and actually highlight that, and I can press Option up arrow, and I can literally move it around. So I can take my code around. Once you get really quick at this, this actually starts to speed up development time, right? Now,
Nice.
in this case,
By the way, quick question. Do you have like most of your shortcuts by now like memorized, or do you have like a reference sheet that you use when you're doing them?
so I'll be honest, in the beginning, it helps to have a little sheet. So as I'm saying these out, it will help just to have a little sheet or something, even if it's like I've got it in my Notion doc at the top sometimes, so I get to learn new ones. However, I'll be honest with you, it's mostly muscle memory. So just by using them day to day, it's going to become like second nature. You just be able to move code around without even thinking about what the keyboard shortcut is. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Now, in this case where we've got one screen, so typically I like to code with a few screens, but sometimes you're out and about on your laptop. So Command B is an ultimate one that you should just remember. It's to open and close your sidebar. Sometimes you don't know what the name of certain files are, so you can't do that little trick I showed you earlier. And the next one is Command J to pull up your terminal, right? So these two things right here are going to save you so much time rather than going up in here, trying to open it up. It's a slow process. And if you look at my terminal now, it's messy. I have loads of stuff going on. What if I want to see a clean slate? So Command K wipes out my terminal, right? So little tricks like that. Command J, hide the terminal, right? So a couple of easy to kind of memorize little things and tips and tricks. And yeah, I think there are a couple of others. There are things like to access the user settings, Command comma. That's going to go ahead and open up my settings if I ever need to do any tweaks, which we're going to do in just a second when I show some of my extensions. And I think the last one I probably want to mention is, or the last two actually, if you want to comment any line of code, and it can be several lines of code. For example, let's comment out my state, Command and /, right? So handy little command there to go ahead and do that, right? And yeah.
By the way, since you mentioned that like that you were pointing like one of the last ones, I think I wanted to like point out one of the comments.
Oh yeah.
Which they were asking explain what command option means, because I use Windows. So what I want to tell everyone is, like, Sonny, if you could look up in the help, there's that reference for all our keyboard shortcuts. Right.
Nice.
Keyboard shortcuts.
There we are.
Yeah. So everyone, that's something cool that you could reference to just have there on the side with all the different major keyboard shortcuts that VS Code uses.
Oh, that's an awesome cheat sheet. Yeah, I would definitely urge everyone to have that up while you're memorizing this, and you'll get to learn even more than I do. I actually don't know some of these, so that's really cool. Yeah, awesome. Great stuff. And it'll also help everyone out for the Microsoft guys versus the Mac guys. Don't want to start a war just yet. The final keyboard shortcut that I wanted to mention was essentially just copying a line up and down from one another. So in this one, I always kind of get this one a little bit mixed up, but it's Option Shift up and down. So in this case, Option Shift, and if I press down, you can see I literally just copy that line down.
Nice.
And that comes in handy every now and then, especially when you've got some UI things where you want to basically copy a div 3 times over or something like that, which we will be doing very shortly. But that's my kind of
so
go-to.
You didn't have to highlight the line. You just use the shortcut, and by default, where this cursor is, it knew what to copy.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. It would just take the line, copy it out. Um, and speaking of that, you reminded me of one other. So most of the time, a lot of us will know there's a keyboard shortcut. If you press Command up down, you can go to the bottom and top. Command left right goes to the start and end of a line. Now, if you do Command delete, it will delete the entire line. However, there is a situation where what if my cursor is over here in the middle and I do Command delete? You see, it's gonna try to delete from the middle, right? There is a shortcut that actually sort of saves us from that. If you do Command Shift K, no matter where your cursor is, it will just take out the entire line, right? So that's a
Wow.
handy little one that as you kind of get faster and faster with these, it's just really, it's going to supercharge you up, and you're going to be able to code at a little bit of a faster rate. I'm not saying you're going to be light years ahead, but it will add up the minutes and hours that you're going to save.
Cool.
Control. Oh, nice. Control K, Control S to edit display or keyboard shortcuts. Nice. Thank you for that. I think with that, let's jump into some of the extensions that I like to use, right? So extensions, for anyone that doesn't know in VS Code, are basically like, think of it like a power up into your editor, right? You add them in and it basically gives your editor extra functionality, and you can create your own extensions. Here's a couple of that I use. And remember, I'm not going to go through every single one. You can just feel free to browse and see the ones I have. But the ones that are worth mentioning that I use every single day, now I actually like to use Copilot quite a lot. And it's not so that I'm lazy and that it does the code for me. It's purely because it is a lifesaver in some areas where I would have otherwise had to have gone back to some old code to reference it out or to check what needs to be done. With GitHub Copilot, it's as simple as either it will guess what you need to do, or in this case, if I write a simple comment and I write, create a piece of state for a number, and there you go. It actually goes ahead and creates a piece of state for a number. You can describe your problem, and Copilot's there to help you out. So that's something. It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. So sometimes, like when I see stuff like that, I'm like, coding already could be a little challenging. Imagine the people that create that type of extension.
Yeah,
Let's see here.
exactly.
One code editor better than VS Code is the next version of VS Code. I like
That's
that.
why I use the Insider Edition. That's nice.
Yeah. Folks, I don't know if you guys know what Insider is, but if you ever want to get like the latest features coming out on VS Code, it always comes out on our Insider edition, and you could experiment. It's kind of like the latest beta consistently, so you could always get the latest and greatest. Although at some risks, if something might be buggy, but that's how we figure things out and smooth it out before it goes into the final version of VS Code.
Yeah, it's great, especially if you've got a work laptop and a home one. I would always urge you to put Insider on the home one, and just see what cool stuff comes out. It's really nice to be able to get to see the new features as and when they're released. But yeah, so a couple of others I want to mention, which I think are really, really worth the time right now, are, for example, Live Share, absolute game changer for us. If you don't know what Live Share is, essentially most of the audience will know what a Google Doc is, right? A Google Doc where people can, 3 people at the same time, you can see their name, and as they're typing in, it's highlighting everything in real time. Imagine that same thing now in a code editor, but with extra features. So in some instances, like now, where let's imagine I want to code with Reynald, I can basically press Command-Shift-P, type in Live Share, and you can see I can actually create a collaboration session. Then I can send a little link, and he can go ahead and join that collaboration session. And we'll be able to edit the same code base in a real-time fashion. You can then follow me. You can kind of come around with me around the app. And the most amazing thing that I think was honestly quite a groundbreaking sort of feature was the fact that most of the time, our app is running on a local host when we develop. So by using something like Live Share, what you can actually do is you can share your port, right? So once we've actually created it, you can actually share. So for example, localhost 3000, you can go ahead and share that port, and you can forward it so that way they can go ahead and access your developer environment, which is next level, right? It's actually pretty cool to be able to do that.
Nice. So what comes to mind in my head is pair programming, right?
Yeah.
So have you ever pair programmed, or you want to explain like what that is to your folks and how that live share could be useful for that?
Yeah, it's actually what I teach most of the students to do. If they get stuck, I say, jump on a pair programming session with another student and see if you can figure it out. So pair programming is the kind of concept of two, or it can be more developers coming together, sitting next to each other, and essentially going through the code together. So they might catch things that you're going to miss. You might go ahead and teach them things that they don't know. The problem is when you're remote, it was hard to do that until live share. Right, so live share was one of those things that came along, allows you to go ahead and, for example, have a call like now where me and Reynald can speak to each other, and we can go ahead and have live share on the side, and it will allow us to go ahead and code together, just like we were in person together.
Excellent description. All right.
So awesome. In the essence of time, I'm going to run through a few, and then I'm going to go into the coding section. So the one that I actually can't live without now is Prettier. I've become so reliant on this just because it's a time saver. Prettier is a code formatter. So a lot of the time, especially when we're new to coding, we might get code that's all out of the place, right? It's indented. I'm being super exaggerated right now. But then if you go ahead and apply something like Prettier, so for example, here I've set it up so when I save, it formats the code every time perfectly the way I want it. So in order to get something like this, you simply just have to go ahead and install it. 25 million people have done it as well. And then you can go ahead and do Command-Shift-P and type in format document, okay? So when you format the document, it's actually going to go ahead and ask you for the first time which formatter you'd like to select. In this case, you would have to go ahead and select Prettier. Now, that doesn't fix it for you. That doesn't do what I just showed you and allow you to do the format on save. In order to do what I just did, you have to press Command, comma, or open up your settings and simply type in format on save. And as you can see, you just pick this little box. And that means that now it's going to apply the format option every time you save your file. And you can do things like format on type. For me, I personally think it's too aggressive. I like to just, every time I save the file, it neatens everything up, saves me a bunch of time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
that's a real popular. I've heard that one. I've heard about that one quite often. You know, it brings a lot more to the table than just the default formatting that VS Code has.
100%. It's one of those things that will save you so much tedious time that you just don't want to be spending that time doing. So yeah, that's definitely a big one to mention. GitLens is another awesome one. So anyone who's doing source control, Reynald actually done an awesome source control video. Definitely check it out. I watched that before I came on. But GitLens is basically an extension you add in, and it makes, let's just call it this, it makes reviewing your files and all the kind of changes around it and who did what a lot easier, right? So I used it in production environments a ton. But you install it, you go ahead, and now, for example, in my code, one of the features are the blame feature. So you can see here, every line, it says that I made this change 2 minutes ago, and this is an uncommitted change. Now, if I click here, and I click on toggle file blame, you'll actually see that I get a breakdown, and I'm a bit zoomed in right now, so you can see it like this. But in this case, the initial commit, you can see all the different lines that were part of the initial commit, and you can see right now all the uncommitted changes. So a lot of the time, if you ever got stuck on something in production and you go to your colleague and you don't know which one to go to, a lot of the time you can see, hey, I saw Gary worked on this, so I'm going to go speak to Gary, see if he can help me out, right? I'm a little bit stuck right now. Or it's actually good for maintenance. In this case, I probably should have committed because there's a lot of uncommitted changes in my code, right? So it's kind of a catch-22, but it's very cool. It's got a bunch of different features, definitely worth looking at.
Nice.
Yeah.
Someone had asked, can we add shortcuts to with the keyboard and mouse? I think they were trying to ask if we can customize our own shortcuts.
I would have to check. I do in a lot of different apps, not VS Code, have shortcuts attached to a mouse. So I have one of these MX Master mouses with different buttons on. I know you can do that. As for custom shortcuts, I'd have to check up on that. I'm not 100% sure. No. Okay. in the meantime, I will, while Reynald checks that out, explain a few of the others I have very briefly. VS Code icons is another one. I just like it. Makes my editor look a little bit more and feel a little bit more like home. So now it's got a lot more color to it. So VS Code icons, if you're wondering, this is how I get all these funky icons. That's something that's just more aesthetically pleasing. Another one, auto rename tag. This one saves you a bunch of time. That's my main consideration for this. If you head down here, you'll see a nice little GIF where they can kind of, or GIF, where they can go ahead and show as you modify an opening of a tag, it will just change the closing of a tag for you, right? Which is so, it just makes sense, right? It should be there. But that's something which is really, really cool, and it works out the box. Yeah, so there's a couple. I don't want to spend too long on this, but I'm actually quite, I feel like it's really handy stuff. So I'm going to give maybe 3 more. So ES7 React snippets. This one we're actually going to use today from inside the build. But this one has amazing snippets. So rather than writing out boilerplate code for React components, we would simply write a short little keyword like RFCE, and it will create a React functional component. Amazing, incredible thing that I use every single day without failure. Probably the most used extension that I have is this one. So that's going to come in handy later on today.
And by the way, it does look like we can do it. I suspected it, but I just wanted to like double check beforehand.
Okay.
But with Google search, yeah, you can't customize it. I would have been really shocked if we couldn't. I mean, because it's so incredibly customizable. You know, I would have thought that's probably one of the first features that they added to it in terms of customization. You know, so
I agree. Yeah, it's super customized. Even some of my students have created their own extensions. It's mind blowing. It's super cool. Maybe I can share them afterwards. But we've got to do highlight. Now, a lot of people don't know about this, but for me, it was one of those things that came in handy a lot of the time, especially when I had a huge code base I was working on. Now, with to do highlight, what you can do is you can go ahead and let's imagine I need to add a fix me note, right? So I'm gonna basically, I've got a little mental reminder somewhere. I need to go ahead and say fix me, colon, and say this is a hack to get the input to work, right? So for example, perfect, right? It's giving me a little bit of a text there. So imagine this was a temporary fix and we didn't want it in there. I can put a fix me there, right? And then let's imagine I need to create a to-do, right? So let's imagine I've just quickly thought of how we could implement something. Now I can go ahead and say, oh yeah, I need to add a delete button, right? And then I can add a delete button over here as such. Now you can add as many of these as you want, and the main keywords are fix me and to do. And what's really cool here is if I press Command Shift P and I type in, it was to do. You can see if I go ahead and hit enter, it will show, do you want to show all of them or just the to-dos and fix me's? Now, if I do all of them, it will show me a beautiful list back to the to-dos. Yeah.
Cool.
This is a lot nicer. Yeah.
Well, no, quick question. So how did you come across this? Were you like specifically searching for this, or you just happened to be looking at something else and then you came across? How did you come across this?
I'll be honest, everything was because of a need at the time. So I found that there was times where I was getting super busy with my work that I just forgot to delete comments. That was the honest truth, right? I had comments that were in there that I just forgot to delete. So I was like, there must be a way that I can find a highlighting extension that has thought of this problem. So then I came across this, and now if I was ever to commit some stuff, I can go ahead and just use fix me or to do, and then I can go ahead and check before I make my final commit, and I can get rid of those comments, make sure they're done.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, sometimes I like to know like how some developers like discover certain extensions or tools or features. So
no, it's awesome. Yeah, it's very true, and it's a fair question. A lot of the time I forget to explain that part, but it's probably the most important, especially for juniors who are learning. Now for today, we are going
to a quick question here. What do you think about command anchors then by Woody Boy 3?
Command anchors. Reynald, do you use command anchors? I'm not sure if I use them, so I don't know. You know what that is?
So much. Woody Boy, if you want to like elaborate on that, we can follow up with that. because
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what he's talking about. So
I'll be honest, I probably don't use a lot of the VS Code abilities because there's so many. But it's always a case of finding which ones work for you and then making it work. Yeah. So Tailwind CSS IntelliSense, this is the one that you're going to need today if you're following along. So we
yeah,
are going to be
this is
using
a big one.
Tailwind. This one is
No, I think
awesome.
this is a big one because this is like the thing that you use a lot, right?
Yeah. So Tailwind CSS basically allows us to have these utility classes, and we just write a small amount of CSS, and it gives us like a massive amount of return. Put it that way. But the hard thing is when you're learning it, um, getting that kind of autocomplete for Tailwind, it's a must if you're using Tailwind, in my opinion. There's so many places you can make a mistake or a little error, and it's also going to help you understand the color palettes, what color you're actually looking at. So if we have a look at this example right here, it's a little bit small right now, but you can see that that's just kind of listing out the different colors, and we will show this in the demo today. But it will show you all the different shades of a color alongside the actual text to go ahead and autocomplete. So game changer of an extension, and it's something that I'd highly recommend. There are more extensions, but if anyone wants to check those out, I have got a dedicated video where I go through, I think, my top 2022 extensions. So feel free to check that out afterwards. I think that was the most important in my eyes right now. The only other one worth mentioning, probably for the beginners who are not using something like React, is something like Live Server. This is really good. If you have a HTML document, for example, what you can then do here is actually have a live server open on the right-hand side of your VS Code. So you can actually have your HTML document shown on the right, or you could have your Chrome or whatever you have. But it's just a kind of a handy thing to have when you're learning, especially in the beginning days of just the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, raw coding days. So that's something I'll definitely recommend.
Nice.
Yeah. Any kind of questions or anything before we jump into the coding portion?
Let's see here. We have totally watching this at work and installing some of these as they come along. Anyone else? Okay, that's not a real question. That's just more of a comment. Yeah, as more questions come up, we'll continue addressing them.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. In that case, and if anyone's wondering what is this one at the top, I forgot to mention that. That is actually called import cost. And it's actually a great one, especially in a production environment. So if you're using something like React and it's not using Next.js and it's not doing clever things like code splitting or tree shaking, sometimes you have to be cautious about what dependencies you're going to use because it could blow your app out and make it slow. So something like import cost is kind of cool. It's built by the guys over at Wix, and it basically just goes ahead and shows you the size of the package and the gzip size once it's in use. So pretty handy little quirky thing. And if it's a big package, it'll be red. So the Firebase package is red, but it's a modular package now, so it's a lot more better at tree shaking things off. But yeah, it's just something I thought was a pretty cool thing to do, especially in a production environment.
Nice. Woody Boy followed up with his initial comment. It's a similar extension, what creates anchors of comments and an own tab to find fix me's, to-dos, or sections. Okay,
Oh,
yeah. So I mean, that's
okay.
it. That's interesting. But yeah, I have not used it. I don't know about you, Sonny, but that's your answer, Woody Boy.
Yeah, no, that I have not used that, but it sounds like it's essentially the same with a separate tab on the side, but it's something worth maybe checking out. So today we're going to go ahead and transform this app, which you see the code for already, to this app over here. We're going to use those shortcuts. We're going to jump through it relatively quickly. And we're going to go ahead and basically show you how to build something super responsive in a really fast fashion, right? So it's minimal code to get this to work, but it's a really app, right? It's even got this nice little hover over effect. You can go ahead and toggle things off. You can add a new to-do, so you can say hello world and chuck it in. And this is real-time connected to a database.
You know, what I really appreciate about this is I feel that throughout like my career, I've gone through like a lot of job interviews, And even like at work, when you're producing something to demonstrate of functionality, oftentimes, folks, you're not told to make something look really good. It's almost like an assumption. And if you, just because you're not told that, don't take that for granted. Like if you're on an interview and you're told to do like a to-do app, you want to make that to-do app look really nice, not just the fact that it just does the functionality too. And one of the things I appreciate about like some of your demos is that you make things like really good, like for your full scale app. Like this is just a to-do app. There's only so much we could do, but nonetheless, the idea of like making it like look dynamic, responsive, and good looking is going to separate you from like another candidate that just did the functionality of the to do that's just still in black and white. You know what I mean? So
I
I wanted to
couldn't
point that
agree
out
more.
for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. I 100% stand with you, even to the point where not just for the UI, if you have a job application, I would even go to the extent of saying add in unit tests, add in extra things, and it will completely blow them away, right? One of my students added Cypress tests into a job interview, and they were just mind blown. No one else had done that in the interview stage. So it's something worth definitely doing. But thank you for that. I remember there was a time when my CSS didn't look like this. So it's awesome to get a compliment for it.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Nice. So I just want to show you guys the back end of today's build. So we are using something called Firestore. Now we're going to go ahead and run through things fairly quickly. So that way we can go ahead and move forward. But what we're essentially going to do is we're going to have a real-time connection between the back end and the front end, right? So I'm going to show you how to do that. And as you can see, if I was to toggle this on, you will see over here that we get a change in our behavior over here. So this one was hop on the live stream. So if I was to go ahead and toggle that off, you can see there's a real-time connection between the back end and the front end, right? So we're actually going to be able to build this, and it's actually way simpler than you think, right? We're going to be using a tech stack today with Tailwind, TypeScript, and Next.js. Right, so these are pretty much quite leading in the React.js space. So Next.js, if you are interested in learning more, definitely check out some of the videos on the channel, or of course, if you want to, the links are all in the description. That's what we're teaching right now. And that's what we highly recommend anyone to be building if they're going to build something out. So let's jump into today's build and see how we can transform this into this. So hop in over to our code. I will be moving, as I said before, fairly fast. So what I've done here in the interest of time is I've gone ahead and installed some of the dependencies such as Tailwind CSS as well as TypeScript. And I did use a template to get that done. So if you simply type in Next.js starter with TypeScript, you'll get a very nice kind of, let me see if I can find it quickly. It's actually quite a cool little command. Next.js with Tailwind. I think it's the second one, or maybe it's the third one, but it's this one right here. Yeah. So you can run this command in your terminal, and this will give you a really nice kind of starter template project. You can name it whatever you want, and that's going to go ahead and give you a TypeScript Tailwind project. Yeah.
Cool.
So we've got that down. So now we're going to go ahead and start transforming it into the app that we're going to need it to become, right? So first things first, let's just create a connection to the database, right? So we're going to do that first. We're going to get the backend stuff out the way. So what I want to do here is firstly get my fresh database instance up. So the one I showed you was a finished one. So this is actually the Firebase project that you're seeing on the screen right now. But we're going to show you from scratch, right? So we're going to go ahead, go over here, head over to build and Firestore database. Now, once that's down, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it. Yeah, once that's down, you want to go ahead and create a database. And today we're going to start in test mode. You can feel free to look into Firebase a little bit more if you want to. Just click enable for the server location. And this will go ahead and prepare the backend, which is going to hold all of our to-dos in today's video, right? Now, once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and show you the settings, right? So I want you to go ahead and this one shouldn't take too much longer. But in the interest of time, we can go here to the cog, click project settings, and you will basically go down and you'll have an option here, which will look something like, let's just do it fresh so I can show you. You'll have a create a web app project button. Okay, so you want to click this, name it whatever you like. So in this case, let's call it VS Code live demo, right?
Mhm.
And I'm just gonna say YouTube, so that way it's for me. Register the app. This will give you some credentials, right? So a lot of people always wonder, are you allowed to share these credentials on the screen? Are you allowed to do this and that? So in the interest of today, I'm going to show you the credentials. Typically, you should always kind of be cautious with your credentials, but this API key is actually made to be public because you're supposed to be putting in Firebase security rules in your database access level, right? So that's why it's allowed, and that's why you can essentially have this on the client, which typically you're not allowed to have. So something worth mentioning. Now we've already installed Firebase. I'm using Yarn, so I did yarn add Firebase in my project. But what we're going to do is we're going to copy this snippet. And if this does get filled out by anyone, I'm going to go ahead and swap the keys out. So don't try to do stuff like that. So let's go into our code over here. And what I want you guys to do is simply go ahead and create a firebase.ts file. Okay, so here, create a Firebase. Let's go into our package JSON level. So top level, firebase.ts file, and simply paste it in, right? Now here you can see we've got an error. So I need to actually, I think I haven't installed the dependency in this one. So in this case, we're going to open up our terminal. And I like to work in a way where I have split terminals. Completely up to you how you want to do this. But I like my app running on the left and then my terminal on the right. And then we're going to be using yarn. So we're going to say yarn add Firebase. Okay. This will install all of the dependencies that we need inside of our app.
By the way, Rui Costa asks if there's a way to disable the test mode from going off in a few days. Or we just have to deal with it.
Yeah, so when if you noticed, when I actually clicked the test mode, it actually had a timestamp. It said after a certain date, it will restrict access. So when you're testing, you can always extend that date where it cuts off. However, I would recommend that you very quickly learn about Firebase security rules and get those in place. So that way you don't just have your database unlocked for everyone to enter. You can go ahead and actually enforce the rules that will protect you. But if you are developing, you're learning, just extend the date that it has initially put there in the Firebase security rules, right? So it was inside of Firebase, Firestore database over here in rules. You'll see that there is a date over here. So that date is one that you can extend if you need to in test mode. Yeah.
Cool.
So we've got our Firebase app open. You can see it's gone ahead and stopped freaking out. And what we're going to now do is we're going to go ahead and initialize the app. So in this case, we are doing initialize app based on the configuration. The problem is with Next.js, we have server-side rendering, we have all this other stuff. And what can eventually happen is you can lead to a situation where it will try to initialize the app more than once, right? So what we'd like to do is we have a ternary condition, which will check to see if the app is already initialized. And we're going to use two helper functions from Firebase, and they're called get app and get apps. And what we're going to do is we're just going to modify this line slightly, right? We're going to say that we're going to get, oh, there you go. That's actually the exact line I wanted, but I'll explain it out. So we're going to actually go ahead and do the get apps. And what this is doing is it's going to give us a read-only array of all the initialized apps, right? And what we're saying here is that if their answer is essentially no, so if there are no initialized apps available, then we're going to go ahead and initialize the app. Otherwise, so else, so this is a ternary condition, so it's called if else essentially. It's going to go ahead and get the app that was already initialized. So this was called a singleton pattern. It's used in coding all over the place. It prevents us from having several instances of one thing. So we only want to have one version of our app. We don't want to have several instances floating around because it can lead to unexpected behavior, right? The next thing we want to do is get a access, basically a database object to access our Firestore database. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in a little helper function. And notice how Firebase is quite modular, right? So it's got Firebase app, Firebase Firestore. Over here, we're going to say const db equals get Firestore, and we're going to pass in the app. And then to access this outside of the file, we're simply going to go ahead and do export default db. Okay. So now I've got this configuration, which is basically a key that will access my database, allows me to go ahead and do whatever I need to do on my front end, right? So what we can now do is head over to our index and we can start actually using our database, right? So the first thing that we have is inside of our Firestore database. And what I'm going to do is for the UI elements, we probably, just for the sake of time, we're going to probably go ahead and be popping in some snippets to save ourselves. And then what we can do is afterwards, we could upload the code so that way everyone could see it. That might be a handy thing. We can have a link to a GitHub repo. That might be quite cool for everyone. But in this case, yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pop our to-do list app over here so we can see what we're coding. Let me move it over here for a second. Yeah. And then what we're going to do is start revamping it out. So I'm going to basically go ahead and get rid of, right now we're using a index.module.css file. So you can see if I was to open up my files on the right-hand side, I have a CSS file. Now, what I like to point out here is Tailwind CSS makes the whole thing way faster when you work with this stuff, because in this case, I have to open up two separate files. I have to modify my CSS file, and then I have to go back and do the relevant changes. It gets very slow and tedious, right? But instead, if I was to go ahead and get rid of this file, so we don't want to use these styles anymore, so we're actually going to get rid of module CSS. Now we're just going to use Tailwind, right? So Tailwind is very simple. Now you can see it's going to complain because I'm trying to use styles everywhere. So we're actually going to go ahead and get rid of these instances. So what I can do here is I can use our multi cursor trick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to styles, I'm going to go to class name, and you can see now if I go ahead and press Command D, now you can see I've got access to all of them. I go ahead and I press right, I press Option, just jump to the next word, and now if I press Option Shift and I go all the way back to class, I can just delete all the class names nicely. And so small things like that are eventually going to add up, and you're going to have a lot more functionality behind you, right? So now what we should see is our app, and tell you what we'll do, we'll just go ahead and pop it here so I can just swipe between. So now we've got a very basic styled app, right? There's nothing happening with the styling here, but we just want to test to see if it's working, right? So if here I'm going to go ahead and add a class name, I'm going to say text should be red, and you can see my Tailwind CSS kicked in, right? My IntelliSense. If I make it red and hit save, well, hey, we get our CSS rules, right? Being applied. So Tailwind's already intact. Now, if you are curious and you're wondering, well, what is it actually doing under the hood? All you have to do is hover over it and it will show you what it will eventually convert down to, right? So it's eventually going to go ahead and show this out on the screen, right? Nice. So let's go ahead and check this out. So
you mean first, it's showing you what it will ultimately show after it's rendered, like if you were to
so essentially what's happening is, so this isn't actually able to be read by a browser. So Chrome has no idea what text red 500 is. So there is a step between now and when it hits the browser where this will get transpiled down, right? So there is a step that's already been set up for us when we use this template. But Tailwind is responsible for that. And what it will do is it will eventually basically go ahead and put this class name in place of here, right? So it would go ahead and actually have a CSS reference to this. And what that does is it means that you eventually you just get these rules applied as opposed to the rules, as opposed to text red 500, which a browser doesn't understand. But a browser does understand what this is. Yeah.
Got it.
All right. Awesome. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start things off with putting a simple image in. Now I've got a bunch of different things being shown, right? A bunch of different areas where it's going to be a bit confusing as to what's going on, but I'm going to explain the Tailwind behind it and hopefully it should make some sense. I'm going to firstly start things off with a div with an image tag. So firstly, this div is going to have a next image tag that we're going to use for it, right? So this next image tag allows us to efficiently render in the appropriate images that we're going to use inside of our app. Now, as you see here, what this is doing is we are saying that the div is relative because when we use the Next.js image tag, we have to specify some kind of layout. When we use fill, what it's going to do is it's going to try and fill up the entire page, right? And I mean the entire website, right? So by making the parent relative, it's only going to fill up its parent container, right? So what we now do is it's worth mentioning, so that way all of the things from this point on make sense. Anything that we do in Tailwind CSS is mobile first. So in this case, the height of 32 means that it's being applied from a mobile, and then it kind of steps up as we introduce something called breakpoints. So all of these rules that you see here, they're all being applied on the mobiles, right? On the smallest screen that we possibly have. This is saying height of 32, and again, that's being converted down to 8 rem, which is 128 pixels, and so forth. It's saying a margin X, which means a margin left, margin right, auto. So it's centering, and a margin bottom of 5. Now, what you're seeing here is essentially going to go ahead and say, once we hit a medium-sized screen, okay, so you can see we've got media queries, right? Now, nobody likes to write media queries. If I meet someone who likes to write media queries, I will shake their hand because I don't like to write media queries. Right? Nobody likes it. You always forget what kind of, what the exact screen size was that you're trying to affect and stuff like that. So this is a good way of making sure that you don't mess up, right? So on a medium screen, the height will change to 48. On a large screen, it'll change to 64. And then we can also modify the margin on the bottom based on what screen we're in. So you see the different, like the kind of power we're getting here is really quite cool, right? So as the screen changes, it's going to go ahead and reshape out. So if I hit save here, we should get an error, right? So now the error here is saying that we have to go ahead and essentially whitelist the domain. And the reason why we do this is Next.js has a lot of things that it's doing under the hood to make sure that it can efficiently cache that image, do all the kind of clever stuff to make it load really fast. So we have to say that we're basically allowing it to pull in images from this domain. So what I'm now going to do is go to my next config, and I'm going to go ahead and pop in the following line. So I'm going to say 4 images. We're going to have an object, and we've got a domains array. And inside of here, all we need to do is basically go ahead and pop in the domain that we're using. So in this case, the images that you're seeing are coming from links.papareact.com. Okay. Anytime we make a change to our config, we typically have to restart the server, but in the latest version of Next.js, they've done it automatically. So if you change it, it actually does that for us. Right? So now if I go over here and I hit a refresh, we should see it, but if not, then I found that this whole restart mechanism doesn't work flawlessly. So we're going to go ahead and restart that. Let's go ahead and see if that works. So 3001 we're running. That's fine, doesn't really matter. Let's go ahead and redo that. So now we should see an image pop up. Nice. All right, so we've got our image coming in. This looks really good. And then what we can now do is kind of build out the rest of the app. So that was a kind of brief introduction into our Tailwind and how it's kind of working. And now we can kind of move at a relatively faster pace, right? So for the surrounding div, I'm just going to go ahead and prepare our overall containers. That way everything will fit nicely, and it will basically have the formatting that we kind of want and that we're desiring. So I'm going to pop in our rules here. And what I'm doing is I've applied some padding to the Y, the X axis, and that changes based on this different screen size. So medium is going to get a bit bigger. The background's going to be white. The height is always going to be screen because I want to have this parallax effect that you see in the end. So there's a nice little effect that we've applied here, whereby even if it goes over that size, notice how the height is always the same size and it's just overflowing. Right? So this gives you like a parallax effect.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Otherwise, the background would be moving too. So by setting the height to screen, we're setting a set height, and then we're saying, or anything that goes past that height, then we should overflow. Right. So in this case, the height is going to be set to the same, and then we're going to have an overflow for any of the contents on the page. Right.
Okay.
So let's hit save, and now we have a look at our thing, and nothing's broken. So we're doing pretty decent so far. And now for the form, we're going to go ahead and do the following. So I'm going to go ahead and actually use something called hero icons inside of today's build. So if you notice here, I have a bunch of different icons inside of our app. So what I'm actually going to do is use something called hero icons. So we head over to heroicons.com. Very simple to install this. We simply head over to the documentation. They've got there, you can actually search for the icons there, or you can go ahead and just install like so here. So we're going to go ahead and pop that in right now. So let's do a yarn.
What's the other one that used to be really popular for icons? I remember when I was trying to learn about UI stuff.
There's a couple. There's actually Ionic icons. There's Ant icons. There's Material UI as well.
Maybe yeah. That sounds familiar. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. So at that point, we've got the icons installed. So I'm going to basically go ahead and take our current form, and I'm just going to get rid of this one. So we've got a nice clean slate. The same with the to-dos, everything. So I just want it to be a nice, clean, fresh slate. And even our logic over here, I'm actually going to go ahead and get rid of any setting logic that we do here. And the state we can keep for now. That's fine. Okay, so at this point, what I want to do is have my form, which has an input and a button in. Now, I'm going to teach you guys something that you may not know. It's called Emmet. Right? Emmet is actually so cool. I love using it. But in this case, if I want a form with an input inside of it, I can write that, right? And then I can go ahead and hit enter. And notice if I hit save now, it's gone ahead and it's already created the syntax for me, right? And this is really cool, right? Because let's say we had an unordered list with 6 elements in, right?
Okay.
Now, you might have to do that manually. It's going to take you a bunch of time. Well, you can do it really quick with Emmet. You can say unordered list with a list element. And I want 6 of them. Bam. Just like that, I get 6 list elements in an unordered list, right?
Nice.
So again, all these kind of things will come in and start saving you a bunch of time as things go on. We're going to have a form with a button inside of it. The button is simply going to be it's going to have an icon inside of it as opposed to any text. We're going to be using a plus circle icon that we pulled from Hero Icons. We'll go ahead and pop that inside right now. And I've already got some styling for this. So we're going to go ahead and pop that in like so. In this case, we've got...
Emmet has like just tons of built-in like snippets in a way.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, if you wanted a button with a class, you can do button dot. This is my class. Hit enter, and you can see you've got a button with this is my class appended. So it's got a bunch of different keywords that you can basically go ahead and use to get what you want.
Nice.
Yeah. Now we are using the latest version of Tailwind, which is really cool because you can add in custom colors. So if you ever want to go ahead and add in a custom color like a hex, you can go ahead and say text dash and then square brackets. Because it's using something called a just-in-time compiler, what it's actually doing is it takes that hex value, and as it compiles it, it will go ahead and use that dynamic value to create the rule, right? So it'll create the new rule based on the value we passed in here. So that came in Tailwind version 2 or 3, but it was a really cool update that they gave. And notice how we've got other modifiers like disabled. Now what disabled does is it says that if the button state is actually disabled for whatever reason, we can actually go ahead, and I've actually put it on the wrong thing. I think it should have been in the button, but we'll affect that afterwards. What we can actually do is we can go ahead and customize it. So if it's disabled like here, you see how the cursor icons change to like that. You're not allowed to do that symbol.
Oh, okay.
Right. So in this case, we've done disabled, cursor not allowed, and that actually gives you a really cool effect. If the button property, in this case disabled, was true, it would actually be appended to this one, but we'll fix that in a second. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, pop in a few things that we need now. The button has to have a type of submit. We're going to style up our button, and we're going to go ahead and pass in the class name like so. So I'm going to just sort out the formatting here. I'm not sure why that's all messed up. There we go. I think we can get rid of that there. We wanted it here instead. And we're going to say that this button is disabled if there is no input in our state. In this case, we've got input at the top. We're disabling the button if there's no input in the state. Right. So in this case, we've got our form. Everything looks quite good. And for the input, I'm going to go ahead and actually do a little bit of mandatory housework that we have to do with input fields. So, I've done that to the wrong thing. Sorry, should have been this. So that's for the input. Our input type text, placeholder is enter a new to do. The value is being assigned to our input state. Whenever we change that text field, we're setting the input with the new value, and then we've got some styling options. Now for the button, I forgot to add in. Sorry, I messed that one up. Let's go ahead and pop in our code Excel, so we can get rid of the type there. It's in mine. There we go. So we've got our button styling, our form styling, and already you can see it's not aligned correctly because we need to go ahead and style out the surrounding form, but we're getting to where we need to get to. So for the form, I've done quite a bit of styling that I'm going to go ahead and pop in. I'll quickly explain what it does as well. So we're saying that the form is a flex box. So anything inside of it, so you see all the children inside of it are going to be sent along the x-axis or y, I can't remember. Flex will automatically make it into a row. And then what we're going to say is justify it centrally. So on the x and y axis is going to be center. Space x of 2 is probably my favorite Tailwind CSS utility class. What it does is it says, just give a space between the children on the x-axis, right? So in this case, if you give a space x of 2, you're getting a nice small gap. If I did a space x of 10, you're getting a nice kind of a bigger gap. When we're restraining the max width on this form, we're centering it because it will be restrained. And then we're giving the background a color of 200. And then whenever you see this syntax, right? So I'm not sure if I can show it easier. Yeah. Whenever you see this syntax, BG slate 200 divided by 50, what that's doing is that's the color and that's the opacity that we're giving it. So if you ever want like 50% opacity with a slate color, that's the shorthand that you can use inside of Tailwind. We rounded the corner, yeah. And then we fixed it to the bottom. So fixed means it's always going to be at the bottom. We've given a Z index of 50 and a nice shadow. So it's always going to be at the top and at the bottom. So it's always going to be the top layer, but at the bottom. So in this case, I've zoomed in. So now you can see that's nice and stuck to the bottom of the page, like so. Right? So fairly nicely, moving pretty quick in this case. What we're now going to do is use that pretty cool snippet that I talked about earlier to go ahead and create our to-do, right? But before we do that, let's have a way of adding a to-do to the database. Right. So the first thing that we're going to do is, and the to-dos that we're going to pull into our database, they have a specific type, and the type is it's going to be called something called document data. So I've already done the homework for us, so it's going to make it a little bit easier. But in this case, it's going to be document data, and you can see we get an error here. So if I go over to the end of that letter, Control Spacebar, you can see my IntelliSense jumps in and says, "I can help you out." That's the type definition from Firebase Firestore. Right? All right. So now we've got our correct type definitions because we are using TypeScript, right? And what we want to do now is I need to create a real-time connection to my database, right? So I want to create a real-time connection, and I want to go ahead and essentially just pull in all the to-dos that I have inside of my database. And what I'm going to do now is, just to save ourselves a little bit of extra time, is I'm going to go ahead and pop this on a different screen and swap out my key in the next where is it gone? In our Firebase file. So I'm going to pop this key in with this project, so that way we've already got pre-filled data to save us a bit of time, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that on a different screen, so that way nobody has a chance of changing anything. I've had that happen before on a live stream, and it's not fun. So
like,
let me go.
You got trolls jumping in trying to change your code?
I've had it too many times, and you have to be quick and you have to go ahead and change it. So there you go. I have changed the config, and now we have a connection to that.
Someone's on there right now going, I never thought about that. I'm going to try that.
yeah, exactly, right? That's why I was very clever with this. Super funny. So at this point now, we're going to go ahead and say use effect. Right? So use effect. And the use effect is basically, it's going to execute a piece of code when the component mounts, right? Or when the component first mounts, as well as when any of the variables in the dependency change. Now, if anyone wants to know any more about React or any of that stuff, I have a free class. It's in loads of my descriptions in the videos, but feel free to watch it. It's going to help you out on that kind of front. So we're going to pull in the database from our Firebase file that we used earlier. So we're going to go up to Firebase, and we're going to pull in that database object. Now, to make a real-time connection to the database, it's quite simple, right? What you can do is you can go ahead and say on snapshot, and we're actually going to need to pull in a few dependencies here. So what I'm actually going to do is pull in a bunch of dependencies at the top that we're eventually going to be using all together, right? So in this case, these are all the different ones we're going to be using. And I know it looks scary, but I promise you it's going to be pretty quick. We're going to say on snapshot, and this gives us a real-time connection to our database. And since Firebase version 9, they have this modular approach to how you build queries to your backend and to your database. So what we can say is it's a NoSQL database. This is collections and documents. So what we're going to say is we need to access the collection, and we need to go ahead and basically we pass it a reference to our database, and then we say which collection do you want to reference. In this case, the collection is called to-dos. So I'm going to go ahead and say to-dos, and I'm going to go ahead and next to it, afterwards, sorry, yeah, do a comma, and this will give me the snapshot. So it'll give me a callback. That's a bit annoying. It's annoying. It'll give me a snapshot. And with this snapshot, I can do whatever I want to do with it. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the to-dos in my state. This is some React code right here. We're going to say snapshot.maps, docs.map. And for every single doc, I'm just going to map it to itself, basically, right? You don't even need to do that. You can just set it to snapshot.map.docs. The reason why I'm showing that is because you may sometimes want to get the data out. I've done that in a lot of builds and a lot of different things. In this case, we're going to keep the entire object. So I'm just mapping it out, right? So in this case, you could just go ahead and save the docs like so, right? Now, what you do want to do as well is protect yourself, right? So as that's a one-liner, we can shorthand this just like so. You can put a comma, and now you can go ahead and have an error object. So obviously, whenever we have a promise, we tend to have a good outcome and an error outcome, right? So in this case, we can say error. And if there is an error, we can say console.error and pass in that error message like so. Okay, so it's nicely formatted. We can see that we're connecting to our database. We get the database, we update our state, and if there's an error, we console log it. Now, as we're using database here, it has to be in part of the dependency tree for our use effect, right? So not dependency tree, it has to be part of the dependency array. So that's pretty cool. Right, so what we can do to test it works is we can do CLG. Remember, that's part of the ES7 snippets extension I told you about. And we can go ahead and type in to-dos. And now let's just see if we're seeing anything on our front end. So I'm going to open up my inspector, and you can see now I've got an array of 6. So it is pulling the 6 to-dos from our database.
Right? Nice. By the way, I just want to remind everyone to keep paying attention, because we're going to be giving out the prizes with the 2 questions. So keep paying attention, because we're going to be asking like a couple of questions to give out like a couple of prizes. And also, if you're enjoying the content, let's go ahead and hit that like button, folks.
Awesome, exactly. Smash the like button. Even set the little bell notification so you can see when Reynald goes live.
Yeah.
So we've got the nice little connection here. Now, what's really cool is that on Snapshot gives us something back called an unsubscribe function. So whenever you do any real-time work, what you should be doing is cleaning up that connection if the database was to ever change. Otherwise, you could get 6 real-time connections easily by accident to your database. So what you could do here is you could say something like const unsubscribe equals on Snapshot, and then with a use effect, you can return a function which will basically handle your cleanup. So in this case, you could say return unsub. Now, as we're just returning it, what you could do is you can make everything easier, and you could just return directly from here. Now, what this is doing is if the database was to ever change, it would rerun this code, but first it would unsubscribe that real-time listener. All right, so you won't end up with several real-time listeners, and the problem is you'll never know that unless you know how to debug it. It would just slow down your app over time, and you'll be like, why is my app becoming a turtle, right? You don't want it to get to that point. So we've done that. Now let's go ahead and add a to-do. So we're basically going to go ahead and say, when you click that to-do, or when we go ahead and type into our form, how the hell do I go ahead and actually add the to-do once we've done it? So in my form, what I can say is on submit of the form, I'm going to execute on to-do. So on submit of the form, I'm going to execute add to-do. So let's go ahead and grab that, head up to the top. And we're going to have a nice little snippet here, which does something similar to what we said previously. So the first thing I'm going to do is copy the input into a local variable. So that way the user will see when they hit enter, it will clear the field immediately. We don't want it so that when they hit enter, sometimes it could be this delay, and then they keep spamming the enter key because they think nothing's happening. So now instead what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say, yep, we should copy it into our own little variable. And we're going to do an asynchronous call where we're going to add a document to the collection. So we're basically going to go ahead and add a to-do at this point. So here, we pass in a reference. You can see this modular approach again. DB, we pass in the to-dos, And then what we do is we pass in the object itself. So here, what I've actually gone ahead and done is the title of your to-do. In this case, it could be the message, it could be whatever it is, but the title here is going to be our input copy, so our copied variable. We're going to have a timestamp, which is the server timestamp. This is a handy function given to us from Firebase, because remember, if you use your local timestamp, my timestamp will be Dubai, Reynolds would be somewhere in the States, right?
Yeah,
So
Pacific.
yes, exactly. It's going to be Pacific. So we're going to have it's going to be completely messed up. So what we should be doing is using the server's timestamp, so both of us are uniform, right? And then we're going to have a toggle for completed, which is false. Okay, so overall, fairly straightforward. And then here, what we're going to do is have a catch clause, which will go ahead and say there was an error if anything bad happened, and that will go ahead and do the following. We have to make our function asynchronous as well. I'm going to go ahead and pop that in async. There we go. Nice. So at this point, we can test it out, right? So we can go ahead and actually pop in. So what I like to do when we test is pop this over to my browser, have this open on the other side, and we can simply go ahead and say, this is a demo, enter. And what we should be seeing here is a new field be entered in. This is a demo with the timestamp with the completed of false.
Nice.
Right? So we've got a real-time connection now happening. We've got access to those things, those to-dos. So the next natural step is to create a new component where we can go ahead and actually use what we've done, right? So let's go ahead and pop this over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to have at the bottom, underneath our form, we're going to have some logic which would look something like this, right? So we're going to have a div, and then we're going to map through the to-dos in our state, and we're going to be popping out all of the to-dos as we need it. So we're going to have a div. This div we're going to style up accordingly. So in this case, div class name. Let's go ahead and pop it here. And this class name, let's just go ahead and have some styling behind it. So we've got a grid. Right, it's a CSS grid being used here, and I know for a fact that a lot of students out there don't like using CSS grid. But what I would say is using Tailwind CSS with the grid is actually a lot easier. So in this case, we've got grid by default with one column. On a medium screen, it turns to 2 columns, and on a large screen, it turns to 3 columns. Right, so it's very simple to write CSS grid rules, which would otherwise be a bit confusing to remember. Right.
Nice.
Gap of 5 also gives all the elements in that grid a nice little sizing difference. Then we've got some restrictions here. Then all we're going to do is map through our to-dos. So I've actually saved us a little bit of time here. I've popped in our to-do mapping. And here what we're going to do is we're mapping through the to-dos, and we're passing over some props. So we're going to pass the key over, which is the to-do ID. That's the ID that comes from Firebase. That's very important, because that actually allows React to go ahead and correctly re-render the list. And then we've got the ID itself we're passing through, the index we can pass through, and the to-do, we're accessing the data of the Firebase object. So when I do .data, what we're actually doing is we're going ahead and popping in, we're getting these fields. So that's what I actually am referring to, okay? So at this point, we need to create a to-do, right? So let's use our handy little snippet. Let's go into our Firebase level, so at the top level. I'm going to create a new folder called components. And inside the components, I'm going to create a to-do.tsx. Yeah? And here, what we can do is we can type in TypeScript RFCE. And as you can see, what that's doing is it's saying TypeScript React functional component, which is exported. Hit enter, gives me the entire boilerplate code. And because the name was called to-do, it's gone ahead and already given me out the correct writing. Right? Cool. So things like that really honestly make a big change as you start coding things out. It saves you a ton of time. That's the main thing. So we're going to go ahead and import a few dependencies that we're going to need. So this includes some icons, some Firebase dependencies, and the database itself. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these in at the top. Then the props. So as you noticed over here, when we passed in, we had a few things like key, index, to do, and so forth. We're going to go ahead and pop in these props down here as well. So we've got the props, which is document data, ID is a string, the index is a number. And then what we're doing is here we've got a destructured object which resembles our props that we passed in. So this would be the to-do, it would be the ID, and it would be the index, right? The index we didn't end up using, but it's handy to have if you ever want to have numbering on your to-dos, right? Now in ES6, what I would say is definitely make use of all the things like destructuring. So in this case, to-do has a bunch of things inside of it, right? It has to-do.completed, to-do.timestamp, to-do.title. So in this case, rather than everywhere in our code we do that dot notation, I can actually just expand it here and say, give me the title, timestamp, and completed. And now whenever I reference it down here, I can just use title, timestamp, completed. I don't have to do that dot notation every time, right? So
Nice.
really kind of getting there pretty quick, actually. So we've got the div here. I'm going to pop in underneath. Let's go ahead and put this here. So now what we're going to do is actually we're building out, just so for reference, we're building this now, the to-do, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of blitz through this so everyone can kind of see how we do it. And then they can kind of pause the video afterwards to give it that kind of understanding a bit more. So first thing I want to do is have we're going to have 3 divs or 2 divs. We have a div for the top section. So anything that you see at the top, we have a div here. We then have a div for this middle container. And then at the end, we have a p tag for the timestamp. We've got a second div here and a p tag underneath. I think I can hear a little bit of some distortion in the background. I'm not sure if there's music playing or. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Yeah. So that's down. And at the bottom here, we're going to have inside of this div, we're going to have a p tag with a title. Down here, we're going to convert our timestamp to a date. So in this case, timestamp going to be we're going to protect ourselves because there is a moment where it could be asynchronously loading. So we're doing something called optional chaining. And then we're going to say to locale string, like so, right? This is going to basically pop out on the screen. So now to do is not defined. We need to go back to our code, control spacebar, and it allows us to auto import at the top, right? So let's go ahead and see. And as you can see now, we're seeing all of our to-dos on the page. So if I type in hello guys, like so, you'll see now, hello guys pops in, right?
Nice.
So you can see these everything's starting to pop in. We're just going to finish up the styling, and then we're going to do a little bit of a sort logic, and then we should be good to go. So at this point, I'm just going to style the overall div in our to-do with a bunch of styling. So let's go ahead and pop this in. And as you can see, we've got a completed variable that pops in. So what I'm actually going to do here is I want to have a bit of a different styling based on if things, let me just move that out of the way, sorry. I want to have a different styling based on if my code if I have completed or not. So I've actually got it here, sorry. Let's pop that there, there we go. It's always nice to have it this way. So if it's completed, it'll look like this. If it's not completed, it'll look like this. So how do we do that? All right, we're going to use something called a ternary operator to conditionally render it. So you put your curly brackets for some JSX, you put backticks for your string interpolation, and then we can apply our styling. So the first thing is I'm going to have a bunch of styling around, and this is going to be responsible for making it look the way that you see at the end. So it's basically going to have that hover effect, which will scale it. The transition and duration are responsible for the animation that you see here. So duration 100 milliseconds. You can see it gets this nice kind of hover effect. Yeah, Tailwind allows us to do that very easily. And then what we can do is we can actually add in some dynamic content. So we can say if completed is true, then I want to apply the following styles. So in this case, I'm actually popping in a ternary operator. So bam, if it's completed, it will use those styles. Otherwise, I will use these styles, right? So otherwise, I'll pop these in right here. Now, what's really cool about this is if it's completed, it will go ahead and have a BG yellow. So in this case, you can see that already some of our items have a yellow state, some have a completed state. So that's because some of the dummy data was completed, some of it wasn't completed. So works pretty well, right? And then we're going to go ahead and actually have inside of this div, we're going to go ahead and style out the rest of the app. So we have a few things to pop inside of here. The first thing is we need to style its container. This is going to be a flex with justify between. And inside of here, what we're doing is we're going to have these 2 icons. We're going to have a plus sign, which is going to depend on the completed state again. So again, this is called a ternary operator. So in this case, I'm going to pop in a div. and we're going to go ahead and have those in. So I'm going to implement these afterwards. So I'm using my little trick there to comment things out. So we're saying if it's completed, we should have a check circle, which is green. If it's not completed, we should have a gray check circle, right? And then the styling for this, we're going to make a flex box and we're going to center it out with a bit of space between each of the components. So now you can see we've got the little nice green tick if it's completed, if it's not completed, and so forth. For the trash icon, I'm going to go ahead and have a separate div here. And this one is going to have a trash icon inside of it. Let's go ahead and pop that in like so. And again, we're going to implement the remove to do very easily afterwards. It's actually way easier than you might think. So the functions that we're going to pop in at the end are actually fairly quick to go ahead and pop in. So we've got our trash icon now nicely being popped in. And that's because the overall container says flex justify between. So it's pushing the space between our first child against the other one. So it's justifying the space between for us.
Nice.
And then the final thing that we have to do is actually the text. Now, what I'm actually doing here is I'm protecting against really long bits of text by saying it's a set height of 32 and we need to have overflow Y of scroll. Now, scroll bar hide is not a Tailwind CSS class. It's an additional one, which I'll show you how to install in just a second. But it's handy if you ever run into a situation like now where you have to go ahead and hide. You want to have overflow, but you want to hide the scroll bar, right? So in this case, you can see here, we've got a bunch of stuff going on. And I've actually got a really nice demo that I could use. So let's just imagine I had a bunch of text. So I'm just going to copy like a bunch of this stuff, paste it in there so to stress it out. And you can see now it doesn't matter how long it is, it's going to be overflow as opposed to breaking my UI, right?
Got it.
So
got it. Nice.
I don't want to have this scroll bar right now. Okay, so what I want to do instead is actually go ahead and use something called scroll bar hide. So what I like to do is I say scroll bar hide. I literally will Google the same thing every time. Scroll bar hidden, show in scroll bar hide. We go here, we install this dependency. So yarn add tailwind hide, and then we simply pop it into our tailwind config. So we install that. While that's installing, we grab the plugin. We go to our tailwind config. So that's done. Command J, Command B to pull this open. Tailwind config. We can go to our plugins and we simply pop in. And now we have extra classes for Tailwind.
Cool.
So that's how easy it is to extend Tailwind. It's actually super easy. You just add in a class, and now it even comes into the IntelliSense. So if I type in scroll bar, you can see we actually get them as well. So that wasn't there before. And just like that, we have a scroll bar hidden that you can still go ahead and use. Right? So it's quite handy like that. So this is looking pretty cool. Now let's just do the final bit, which is the complete, delete, and the sorting. So it's ordering by date and if it's completed or not. And we are literally done. So we need a function called toggle to do completion. So let's go ahead and pop that in over here. So this is going to be a function called toggle to do completion. And this one right here is going to be an asynchronous function. And it's going to go ahead and be responsible for toggling whatever the state is of our document. It will reverse the completed state. So if it was done, it would be false. If it wasn't done, it would be not done, and so forth. So in this case, I can say await. And you can see we actually get a nice little snippet here for us. And that's actually exactly what I needed. So I'm saying update doc, which is a handy function from Firebase. I pass in the reference. Now, notice how when I'm working with Firebase, it's all about references, right? The collection reference I used earlier. This time I'm referencing an individual document. So I pass in the DB instance, and I will simply go ahead and say, go to the to-dos collection and access the database, access the item with the ID, in this case, the to-do ID. So it will know exactly what item I'm trying to access here. So go into to-dos, it will access this document, and we can update the details. So we're going to say update it with the completed being the opposite of whatever we have on our end, right? Then we can add a little bit of a catch at the end. So we can go ahead and just say catch if anything went wrong. And we can simply use this now. So I can do my multi-cursor trick, Command D, Command // and there you go. So toggle completion is done. And because this is all real time, That is just as simple as doing it like that. Look at that. And that is actually working with a real-time connection.
Very cool.
Yeah. Delete is just as simple. It's literally just as fast as that. What we can actually do, and then it's actually the same exact thing, except what we are doing is using the delete doc function, and we are calling the overall function remove to do. So in this case, delete doc, exact same layout with a catch statement in case anything goes wrong. And we can go ahead and simply pop that into our trash icon. So that way, when you click the trash icon now, it will go ahead and delete the database item, right? So really, really kind of powerful stuff here. The only icing on the cake really is how would you sort that stuff by, you know, by timestamp or by completed state? And it's actually super easy to do. All you have to do is go to where we pull in that real-time connection, and we just have to wrap our collection with something called a query. So in this case, I can say query, pop in the collection like so, and now I can add in the following query rules, right? So I can add in the following things. I can say query and order it by the completed in ascending, and then order it by the timestamp in ascending. I hit save.
Okay.
What you're going to notice now is Firebase does something incredible for us. So it will go ahead and it will actually go ahead, and if I refresh, this is a local problem on my computer, not on yours, on anyone else's. So here, what you'll actually see is I've already done the index for this, right? So what happens is you can see everything sorted perfectly. And if I click complete, it's actually sorting them, moving the completed to the end. But this was a custom ordering. So what Firebase will do is timestamp ordering is very simple, right? It can do it off the bat. But in this case, we've got a custom field which we're trying to sort by. And not only that, we're doing 2 order bys. So it needs to create a custom index. So the first time you do this, you'll get a nice little error with a link to create a custom index, right? And what it will do is it will take you all the way over to your Cloud Firestore, and it will make one of these for you. So you can see I made a couple, but it will actually ask you, would you like to create a custom index? And then you click yes, and it will go ahead and create a custom index that allows you to query your database in whatever custom way you feel you need. And it will actually do all of that for you out of the box. So it's really, really nice. And it allows you to have this powerful search functionality. So just like that, we actually have that in place. The only 2 things I'm going to probably chuck in, which I'm not going to explain too much, we can put in some code, is a little bit of a kind of just a round of a power behind Tailwind CSS as to what you can achieve with some simple div styling. If I was to pop in the following, so you can see here we have, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so everyone can just sort of screenshot that and see for themselves. You can basically feel free to break this down. But what I've done here is I've styled a couple of divs, and these are absolutely positioned in the background. And these are basically going to be, so these divs are hidden on large screens. So this is going to be responsible for the small little design you'll see, which I'll show in a second. And these are responsible for the left designs and the right design. So I'm going to show you right now exactly what I mean. So if we go ahead and hit refresh, you can see these 3 little things right here. This is these 3 right here. And you can see by default, the rest of the designs, so the left and right sides, are hidden. But now if I go to the big screen, you can see those 3 arrows, those 3 lines are hidden on the large screen, while on the right and the left, they're showing now. So just from these right here, we're able to achieve a really nice UI. But it's worth mentioning that might take a little bit of time explaining, but just by looking at this, you can slowly break down how that was achieved in a really simple fashion. And then obviously you can refactor this, you can put this into its own component if you'd like, as background or whatever it could be. But yeah, just like that, you have a beautiful app which is fully responsive, which has a real-time connection to a Firestore database, and does sorting and ordering as we need to, using the productivity tips and tricks that we talked about earlier. So
Nice.
yeah, that is that's the build.
That is awesome. Man, that was a lot there. And it was good. It was great. All right. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is we're going to jump right into our questions. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Let's see here. I have the first question. All right. So folks, there's going to be a prize given out for these questions. I'm going to start with the second. We have the platinum membership and the diamond membership.
Let's start with the platinum.
Start with the platinum? Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the first question, folks. You guys ready? Through the build transformation, Sonny had used a keyboard shortcut several times to quickly jump to different files in VS Code. What was the keyboard shortcut used? All right.
I'm curious to see if everyone's paying attention.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yes, we have a winner.
We already have a winner. I didn't get to put the Jeopardy music
on. Actually, we have somebody. I think they've given the Windows command instead, but I'm sure that may work as well. I know for a fact on Mac it's Command P. I'm not sure on Windows if it's Control P, but we have to double check that. Thomas Lawrenson definitely got it right, but well done to Rui Costa if that is the command on Windows as well.
All right. So then we go by the first one that entered, which was Rui Costa.
Yep.
All right, Rui Costa.
Yeah, Rui Costa, you've won a Papa Platinum membership, which is actually huge. So you have full access to my course, Zero to Full Stack Hero, with coaching weekly, with a bunch of other stuff. You get access to our Slack community with over 700 members. Super cool. And it's worth £600 at the moment. So yeah, well done. Congrats.
Nice. Well, congrats, Rui. So our second question here is, this is for the Diamond membership.
Yep.
When building the new To-Do app live on the stream, Sonny had used a specific operator which behaves similar to an if-else statement in his JX code to display the correct output. What was the name of that operator?
Oh, guys, people are fast. Wow. Susui. I think I pronounced that right. Susui got it right straight off the bat. Ternary operator. Yeah, so you notice we used a ternary operator here and here in our JSX to get the same effect as an if else, and you will use that like massively amounts throughout your builds. But well done, Susui. Diamond membership is everything a platinum membership is, plus you get access to our higher tier mentorship package. So fortnightly, weekly coaching calls with myself, and access to our higher package of content. So our higher modules, all that kind of stuff. And that's worth £1,000. So well done.
Great. Well, congrats, Susui. So what's the best way that they can collect? They should just send you an email, right? Or
yes. So they can send an email over to papareact.team@gmail.com, and I already know the winners. So just send us an email, and the team will help you out with your access. And yeah, that's the easiest way to go ahead and contact us.
Cool. And folks, right there on the VS Code, I don't know if you saw him, he just added his email that you'll want to email to collect your prize. papareact.team@gmail.com. So
perfect.
This has been fantastic. All right. So Sonny, I appreciate you coming over and doing this live stream with us. And it was one of our longer ones, but it definitely didn't even feel like that. That was just hit like 94 minutes. So this was.
Thank you so much, Reynald, for hosting, and thank you to Microsoft for bringing me on.
No problem. And folks, again, hit that like button if you got value out of this video. And also don't forget that we do TikToks and YouTube shorts consistently, and they're actually some fun videos. So check us out at tiktok.com/VSCode, and also our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/code. So until next time, Thanks for joining, and I'll see you guys later.
Thank you, everyone. Peace.